Welcome to r/entitled people, where we share stories from your lives about people who think the rules don't apply to them, and they should get what they want. Thank you friends for subscribing to the channel, and for so many likes. And today we have two great stories, so subscribe, hit the like button, and let's begin. The first story, funny software training with an SH trainer who embarrassed himself at the end. The second story, the boss really begged me to stay because without me they would have to start from scratch. But no way. The first story is the weirdest company training of my professional career. I've been working in computing for over 20 years, and I've had some interesting on-site training sessions during that time. But the training I just had in the past 2 days will definitely stay with me for a while. I was expecting 2 days of stupefying boredom, but instead I was hilariously entertained. Some background. Our company has recently started to roll out a new methodology for streamlining the software process. Let's call it the Zombo method. At first, management has tried to implement this on their own, but they've discovered that just reading the book and winging it doesn't really work, so now they've decided to cave and buy the training. It's a pretty invasive change, with teams being reorganized, a new way of planning, working, releasing, and so on. The R&D department, which I'm a part of, is understandably skeptical. To roll out Zombo, management has been given a training, and now the rest of us are in for this treat too, spread out over 2 days. Seems reasonable. I've decided to consider it a fairly pointless 2-day vacation from work. Let's see what happens. The first strange thing is that the trainer doesn't introduce himself at the beginning of the course. It might be because some of us were waiting for him in the wrong conference room at first, due to some mix-up, but still, several dozen people entered the right conference room a few minutes late, and the guy doesn't tell his name. I still have no idea what he's called, so I guess we're gonna have to refer to him as the trainer. Sitting down at a table, I find myself seated beside a colleague, let's call him Mark, who's in a foul mood. He explains the following to me. His team is currently in a state of limbo, and it's unclear what they're going to be doing. The person who should have told them what to do, their manager, was hired a few months back and has done nothing at all to help them. Instead, this manager has spent all her time pitching Zombo to the company, and almost immediately after doing so has quit. Mark will spend the entire 2 days griping about everything and anything the trainer, who is not connected to that manager in any way as far as I know, has to say, dismissing him as a marketable guy trying to hawk Zombo to us. This is obviously puzzling to the trainer, who patiently tries to extol the virtues of Zombo, sometimes sounding like he's making a sales pitch, yes, but mostly explaining fairly dry technical details. But the pushback doesn't come from Mark alone. Many other colleagues are also getting into discussions with the trainer, slowing down the training. This is for several reasons. It's becoming clear during the training that management has misunderstood important parts of Zombo and is misimplementing it. For example, they told us that being reorganized into new teams must be a B, but that the problems would resolve themselves and things would stabilize in about 3 months. The trainer clearly disagrees with that estimate. The trainer also keeps having to say that he gave the managers a pretty hard time, but nobody seriously believes that management is going to make a radical change themselves. The trainer is seeing problems that don't really exist. For example, much time is spent on emphasizing that geographically distributed teams are terrible, even though the entire R&D team is used to working that way. We stopped having issues with video conferencing years ago. People ping each other using instant messaging all the time, etc. All of our criticism is obviously getting to the guy, but he's acting professionally, deflecting questions with vague generalities and playing question and answer games that somehow always turn out to demonstrate the benefits of Zombo. My colleagues aren't buying it, and the mood is gloomy. After a lunch break, we do some exercise, with different employees presenting their results. This is where I first start noticing that the trainer is sitting on his chair, clearly nodding off. This will happen multiple times during the 2 days. He doesn't outright fall asleep, but he's got his eyes closed and is obviously about to doze off. A colleague, who is generally not so adverse to the training, said that he noticed it too, and confronted the trainer with it, who told him that it was because of his condition, whatever that means. The first real drama happens in the afternoon of day 1. The group is supposed to do some group exercise designed to demonstrate the value of teamwork. I won't bore you with the details, but let's say it's a fairly childish exercise for a bunch of grown men to do. Maybe that's why one of my colleagues, let's call him Ivan, a Russian guy, suddenly decides that he doesn't want to participate. He says he'll observe instead. The trainer isn't having it, insisting that participation is the whole point of an exercise designed to point out the value of teamwork. Or to put it another way, he doesn't like that Ivan is not playing along with proving the point he's trying to make, and is undermining his authority. They have a tense standoff for several minutes, with neither of them backing down, while the rest of the group is deadly silent. The trainer wants to send Ivan out of the room, but Ivan won't do that either. Eventually, they talk one-on-one in a corner, as the rest of the group takes an awkward coffee break, and after a few minutes, Ivan turns out to have been somehow convinced to stay and participate. No less awkward is when the trainer tries to illustrate the beauty of a highly efficient team by showing us a YouTube video of the haka dance as performed by the All Blacks, the New Zealand rugby team. I'm sure you've seen it. The team does a traditional dance involving menacing gestures, chanting, and sticking out of tongues. It's a lot of fun to watch, but the trainer gets weirdly emotional. He's on the verge of tears, apparently deeply moved by the amazing teamwork. Maybe someone should have told him that a sports team doesn't make for a great metaphor to a room full of software developers. Again, an awkward silence hangs in the room. Apart from this, the training is riddled with mishaps. The projector isn't working right, the trainer projects onto a wall filled with post-its and presentations so that nothing is readable, etc. There are also many cases of the trainer starting to clap at some group members' show and tell, with only a few people joining in to create a very unenthusiastic smattering of applause. By the time day 2 rolls around, the trainer is making little effort trying to hide his, okay, let's just get through this SH attitude, and most of the group seems to agree with him, at least on this point. At this stage, he's conceded to our criticisms enough that he's willing to say, over and over, that this transition is not going to be easy, that it'll be painful in the beginning, etc., which of course makes the group even more unwilling to play along. Also, he's a bulky guy, and I can't help noticing his beer belly showing below his t-shirt. We spend almost the entire second day covering a basic methodology we already use, so most of the group are bored out of their minds relearning what they've already been doing for several years, with the added joy of being told by an outsider that they've been doing it wrong all this time. As the day is nearing its end, the trainer wants us to do a little exercise. Take the evaluation technique we've just learned and apply it to the training itself. What went well? What didn't go so well? What might he improve? Again, awkwardness reigns supreme as the group considers how honest they want to be. Not unsurprisingly, it's Mark who speaks up first, calling the training boring and noting his positive point that he got a free lunch out of it. The trainer gulps audibly and dutifully takes down the barrage of criticism that follows, as other group members join the fray. And so we slowly limp toward the end of the second day. The finish line is in sight and we can all go home. But wait, what's this? At 5:15 p.m., friend Ivan decides that the trainer is not getting off so easy. He says that the course is pointless, that the vague claims about its purported success rate are not substantiated, and that the trainer's claim that this has worked for hundreds of other companies doesn't count for anything. At this point, the trainer decides to throw a hissy fit and announces that if this is how it's going to be, he's going to quit. Remember, there's maybe half an hour left on the clock. He dramatically hands his next PowerPoint slide clicker to Ivan. If you know it all, why don't you do the training? And unplugs his computer, clearly threatening to storm off in a huff. I'm honestly not sure if at this point he expected someone to go, "No, wait, stay. Ivan doesn't speak for all of us." As it is, nobody tries to stop him. He calms down, returns to face the group, and to make the humiliation complete, has none other than Mark intervene on his behalf, diffuse the tension somewhat, and have a reasonably open conversation about what's bothering the group. The training still goes on for another hour or so. In the end, rather than thanking us or thanking him, he simply says, "You can go if you like as far as I'm concerned," which the group gratefully accepts as a sign that the training is over. I wouldn't be surprised to learn that the trainer maxed out his per diem at the hotel bar that night on hard liquor. But if I'm going to be asked to score the training, I fully intend to check all the very satisfied boxes. I haven't enjoyed a training this much in years. The second story is, left my job, got all I was owed and gave them nothing. Feels pretty great. Started working at a cocktail lounge in London mid-last year. In my interview, I was promised the world. The bar will be your baby. You have complete control. We're only open Wednesday through Saturday, so 4-day weeks. All the usual we're a family BS, we care, blah blah blah. I was put on $11.50 an hour, but contracted for 40 hours that I would never actually work all of, so agreed to start on that rate, with the promise of raises once I ended my probation. After 2 weeks, it became apparent the owner, an accountant who'd opened the venue as a vanity project, was out of his depth and didn't know what he was doing. He'd messaged me the night before telling me what time he'd wanted me to come in. He didn't have suppliers for fruit, so would drive to supermarkets on his way in trying to find stuff that we needed. Wouldn't trust us to lock up the venue, but also made us wait for him to leave, even if we'd finished closing the floor and bar. He'd come behind the bar, take bottles to tables, and then blame us that stock was out because we should have known he wasn't going to put it through the till. He also couldn't hold on to staff. In my 6 months there, I saw 3 full groups of employees start and quit. I put up with my fair share of difficult employees, so kept my mouth shut, head down, and choose to see everything frustrating as funny. When another employee quit without notice, He told me he wasn't going to pay him for that month and was going to delay giving him his PS5 to make it harder for him to start another job. Major red flags started waving around and I realized I needed to cover myself. I was given an initial raise, up to £13 an hour, but he extended my probation another 3 months because he'd heard me telling a new employee we didn't get breaks. We didn't. In November, I had a bad flu. Had a PCR, so not COVID at first, so called in sick. He feigned badly to be concerned, but was clearly just disbelieving that I was actually ill. After I recovered, he insisted I take another PCR test. Actually, very good advice. But then while I was waiting for my results, tried to bully me into breaking the law and go in, because they were busy. The next day, I got my positive result and test and trace made me isolate for another 8 days. When I got back to work in December, he had a new contract for me. It changed my rate to £12 an hour, but with a £1.50 an hour of service charge guaranteed. We had a 12.5% service charge on all bills, and made enough in a night to cover a week's worth of $1.50 an hour for all employees. When I tried to confront him about this, he straight up lied and said we actually didn't make that much service. Not hard maths, and I see the cash up report every night, and that I didn't have a choice as it was new policy. I told him I wanted $14.50 an hour total, as I was going to accept a pay cut, just because they wanted to start paying us part of our service charge monthly, not annually. He told me this wasn't possible, and that the people above me weren't even on that. Again, lying, but he doesn't know we all discuss our salaries with each other, and that I wouldn't find anything better elsewhere. At this point, I started tentatively looking for other work. The next week on Monday night, he messaged me telling me I was needed at the venue on Tuesday. I'd made plans and told him I had, to which he responded by telling me that it wasn't acceptable, and I knew that Tuesday was a work day and must be available in the future. I'd never been in on a Tuesday before and we weren't even open. I'm still not sure what he wanted me to go in for. I found another job, ironically through a temp staff who'd helped us out one night and had a major argument with the owner about pay, and started planning my resignation. He'd extended my probation, so I only had to give 1 week's notice. I took all my notes for the prep, the specs and stock count lists, left my uniform in my locker with the key when we closed for Christmas break. It's important to note that I was the only employee who knew all the cocktail specs and prep, so without my notes they're gonna have to start from scratch. Technically all the cocktails are the owner's intellectual property, but the notebook is mine and he doesn't actually know any of the recipes. After receiving my offer letter for my new job, I emailed in my resignation, in which I reminded him that I knew what I was owed and would expect it in full, along with my P45 in a timely fashion. I inferred that I had evidence of him intentionally withholding the other guy's P45, that if he did the same with me, I'd F him. The next day, I woke up to 10 plus missed calls, texts, voice notes, and an email. I ignored them, and before long, his hospitality consultant began calling me. The more I ignored them, the more they offered. Suddenly, the $14.50 an hour was more than possible. I was offered every second Wednesday off, as well as back to the original agreement of Tuesdays not being a workday. It was very satisfying to end my employment with that place, and even more so to do it with him begging and pleading for me to stay. My final pay arrived today, and it's a nice chunk of change, so I'm glad I made a point about threatening him, as he would have 100% tried to weasel out of giving me anything. I start my new job tomorrow, and I'm very satisfied. The moral of the story? Never trust such people, and always be prepared to fight for what's owed to you. They will do whatever they can to save a penny, however illegal or shady it may be. Subscribe, hit the like button, and have a nice day.